ABC 10 News presents a mayoral town hall with Meals on Wheels of San Diego County and Oasis San Diego.
I'm ABC 10 News anchor Lindsay Pena. It's hard to believe, but the November election is just weeks away. And today, instead of journalists asking the questions, we wanted to let you, the people, the viewer, pose questions to our mayoral candidates. We are, of course, joined by our San Diego candidates for mayor, Barbara Bry and Todd Gloria, to talk about issues that matter to our senior community. Before we begin, we want to hear from our community partners, Meals on Wheels of Greater San Diego and Oasis San Diego.
Hello, my name is Brent Wakefield, President and CEO of Meals on Wheels San Diego County. We've been in San Diego for over 60 years, ensuring that older adults who need a meal get a meal, because we believe that good health starts with a balanced diet, and just as important, daily contact with somebody who cares about you. Now, San Diego is in fact America's finest city, and we should have America's happiest and most fulfilled older adults. Our county's aging roadmap is a step in the right direction, and this forum can be as well. Thank you.
Welcome. My name is Simona Valenzuta, President and CEO of San Diego Oasis. Every day, Oasis leads the conversation to redefine what it means to be older. We are so often misunderstood and marginalized, while in reality, we are a tremendous resource. Unprecedented longevity means that we need commitment of leadership and resources for senior wellness. It takes a village to take care of all of us.
Before we start, we want to explain to everyone exactly how things will work today. So we're going to start with opening statements from each candidate. That will be followed by 3 rounds. Rounds 1 and 2 will consist of pre-recorded questions. Round 3 will be a live question round. We'll end with closing statements by each candidate. Our participants and their questions were pre-selected based on surveys done through Meals on Wheels, Oasis San Diego, and ABC 10 News social media networks, and selected for their relevancy. The candidates will be notified of their time. You can also follow along on your screen. A green bar flashing on that screen will indicate 30 seconds. A yellow bar indicates 10 seconds are left to answer, and a red bar will indicate that their time has run out. It is time now for some quick introductions. Barbara Bry is a current San Diego City Council member, pro tem president representing District 1. She serves as chair of the Budget and Government Efficiency Committee, as vice chair of the Rules Committee and the Committee on Public Safety and Livable Neighborhoods. Barbara has worked in the tech industry as an educator and as a business journalist. Welcome, Barbara Bry.
Welcome. Thank you.
Todd Gloria has served in the California State Assembly since 2016. He currently serves as House Majority Whip. Gloria began his career at the county's Health and Human Services Agency. He later went on to serve 2 terms on the San Diego City Council, representing District 3. In his role as council president, Gloria served as interim mayor of San Diego back in 2013. Welcome, Todd Gloria.
Thank you very much.
Each candidate now has some time to make their opening statements. We held a coin toss just before this debate began. Barbara Bry won that coin toss and chose to go first. Barbara Bry, you now have 2 minutes.
Great. Well, I'd like to begin by thanking Oasis and Meals on Wheels. We are so blessed to have you in San Diego. You provide nourishing food and nourishing companionship to our seniors, and your work has become even more important during this pandemic. So first, a little bit about me. Before I ran for city council in 2016, I was a small business owner in the tech world, and I also was a leader in the nonprofit sector. I ran because I was frustrated that the street in front of my office was being torn up over and over again to have the same work done. I got to City Hall and was astonished to find a culture of no accountability and no transparency, a place where major decisions are made behind closed doors. I stood up to it immediately. I opposed the Soccer City land grab, and I'm proud that I was able to hold together a fragile council coalition to get the SDSU West transaction done, one of the most transformative projects in our region in decades. Just a few weeks ago, I was at the groundbreaking. And this proves that with the right leadership, we can do big things in San Diego. I demanded an independent audit of the water department when customers weren't being taken seriously and they were being overbilled. And I was the first elected official to demand accountability and transparency about the disastrous 101 Ash Street purchase, which was led by my opponent. As mayor, my number one priority right now is to lead an inclusive economic recovery that benefits all of our residents. I've spent my life standing up for others, challenging the status quo, and getting things done. My life has been about solutions, not empty promises. I will bring my years of experience in business, government, and the nonprofit sector to leading the city, and I look forward to your questions today.
All right, Barbara Bry, your time has concluded. Todd Gloria, you now have 2 minutes to make your opening statement.
Thank you, Lindsay, and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share a bit about myself and my vision for our city. I want to thank Oasis and Meals on Wheels for helping to create this opportunity, as well as 10 News for hosting it and getting this out into the broader community at a time when so many of us must stay at home in order to protect our collective health. I'm running for mayor because as a third-generation San Diegan, I know where our city has been. As the son of a maid and a gardener, I'm aware of how difficult it is for so many people to make ends meet in a city as expensive as San Diego. And importantly, I'm running for mayor because I have a vision for where I'd like to take us. I think in this pandemic, we have all seen the tragic impacts of COVID-19 on so many of our families, but in particular, our senior citizens, and defeating this virus must be our top priority. Of course, the resulting economic recession has been hard also on all of us, but particularly acute on those who are living on fixed incomes, like so many of our seniors. Getting our economy on track has to be a priority. And going forward, we have to be a city that focuses on the key challenges of our infrastructure and of our housing affordability crisis. For too many folks, the only way to get around town is by car. And I recognize that for some seniors who no longer are able to drive, that is a particular challenge at whether or not they can protect and preserve their quality of life. I believe that we are a world-class city and we deserve a world-class transportation system, and I hope to lead the city to create exactly that. And importantly, we have a housing affordability crisis. Increasingly, this is a city where working and middle-class people cannot afford to live, and where people on fixed incomes cannot foresee being able to deal with additional rent increases. Prioritizing the construction of housing that is affordable to everyday San Diegans will be a priority in my administration. I look forward to discussing these ideas and other ideas with you all throughout the course of this debate. I believe that we can do great and big things as a city. It's going to take dedicated, experienced leadership to do it, and I believe that I am that leader.
All right, Todd Gloria, thank you so much. That concludes our opening statements from our candidates. We're going to jump right into our first round of questioning. As we said, these are pre-recorded questions from local seniors right here in San Diego. Let's listen to the first one.
Hi, my name is Gladys and I live in Hillcrest. Older adults have disproportionately been affected by the COVID-19 stay-at-home order. What will you do to make sure San Diego can reopen successfully while slowing the spread of coronavirus?
All right. Barbara Bry, you won our coin toss. This question goes to you first. You have 1 minute.
Great. Thank you, Gladys. It's a great question. I think during the pandemic, small businesses have been at a major disadvantage. I mean, early on, you could go to Target or Costco to buy a book, a piece of clothing, or a toy for your grandchild, but you couldn't go to your local neighborhood store. I think what's important as we move forward is that we observe post-social distancing, we wear face masks, and we support our local businesses so that they will be there because they form the fabric of our community. Through my council office, we've been spotlighting local businesses in my council district, encouraging our residents to shop local and to do it in a safe way.
All right. Thank you, Barbara Bry. Todd Gloria, you now have 60 seconds to respond to Gladys's question.
Well, Gladys, thank you for that question. And obviously the answer is a very detailed and lengthy one. And I encourage you to go to my website, toddgloria.com, where you can download my Back to Work SD plan that lays out my vision of a comprehensive recovery for San Diego. But specifically, I guess, to answer your question right now, I think that we have to allow data and science to guide our decision making. The decisions have to be made by healthcare professionals, not by politicians, and making sure that whatever we do in terms of reopening, it is done with full safety, making sure that we're containing the spread of this virus. I think while we're in this situation, we must do everything we can to address vulnerable communities. I've been proud at the state level that we've dedicated funding to programs like Great Plates Delivered, which is partnering with local restaurants that are currently not experiencing their full capabilities to provide hot, nutritious meals to seniors throughout our community. I'll be volunteering at one of those sites tomorrow because it's one of the ways that we can support seniors and small businesses during this difficult time. That's just one novel idea that we have put into place right now to help people get through this. We have more ideas. Find them on my website.
All right, thank you, Todd Gloria. Barbara Bry, you have 30 seconds if you'd like to respond.
Yes, I'd just like to add that in June, my campaign released our roadmap to recovery, which details how, as mayor, I would lead an economic recovery, how I would address environmental and social justice issues. My opponent released his a few days ago, and it was interesting to see that we have some ideas in common about how to move our city forward. I saw the urgency of doing it more quickly, and ours did come out a few months ago.
All right, and Todd Gloria, you also have 30 seconds now.
You know, Lindsay, being first does not always make it best. I actually undertook a very comprehensive public-facing effort to invite public input into our plan, and it's reflected in the quality of the plan that we put forward. Again, I encourage folks to take a look at it. This is difficult stuff, and you can't just whip something out. What you should do is listen to people. I think that's what politicians should be doing at a time as difficult as this. We listened, and the ideas that we collected are in that report. Again, go to toddgloria.com and download it and read it for yourself.
All right, thank you very much, candidates. We're moving on to question 2, another senior. Let's take a listen.
Good afternoon. My name is Ed. I live in the Valencia Park community of San Diego. The COVID-19 pandemic has seriously impacted the mental health of many seniors. How will your administration invest in mental health and in wellness programs for the older adults for the long term?
Another very important question related to coronavirus. Todd Gloria, this goes to you first. You have a minute.
It is an important question, and we have such a stigma against mental illness in our community that I'm grateful this is one of the topics we're talking about this morning. I believe one of the most transformative things we can do is elect a new board majority at the County Board of Supervisors. Having elected leaders at the county who has direct responsibility for mental health that actually cares about this issue and prioritizes this issue is important. And then a partnership with the city to make sure that communities like Valencia Park are getting the services that they need. I'm proud to have the endorsement of County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher in this campaign because he sees me as the candidate that he can work with to actually get that done. And mental illness and mental health issues are not new to me. This is something I've worked on throughout my public sector career, including working on legislation in Sacramento to force counties like ours to take the hundreds of millions of dollars that they have for mental health that they are not spending and force them to spend them in our communities because we recognize prior to COVID-19, we had a mental health crisis. It is going to be made significantly worse because of COVID-19, and we need to get those dollars out in the community to service people who have needs.
Todd Gloria, your time has concluded. Barbara Bry, the floor now goes to you.
Yes, Ed, that's a great question. And as you know, the county is the health agency for the entire region. And as mayor, I will work collaboratively with the county to make sure they step up and provide more access to mental health programs, that we need more mental health beds, we need more substance abuse programs, and clearly they have not done what they need to do. They are stepping up now. They need to be held accountable. And as mayor, I will hold them accountable to truly serve our residents. And this is going to be a more important issue going forward as many people have been feeling the stress of COVID. Calls for help are increasing, and the county needs to do its part. And as mayor, I will hold them accountable. You can learn more about my plans at my roadmap to recovery on my website, barbarabry.com.
Thank you, Barbara Bry. Todd Gloria, you now have 30 seconds to respond.
Well, I'd say that, again, Ed, thank you for the question. And I would just put a finer point. You know, it's not about just rhetoric, it's about action. And whether it was my time at the city council where we helped to expand the psychological emergency response teams, acknowledging the priority for mental health, or legislation I've carried in Sacramento, it's not just about encouraging or asking, it's about doing, and I have a record of doing on the issue of mental illness.
Barbara Bree, you also have 30 seconds if you would like to respond.
Sure. Well, I've demonstrated over and over again in my life that I will stand up, I will challenge the status quo, and I will get things done. And this is what I will do with mental health.
All right, thank you, candidates. We now have a third question. This comes from Maggie in Mission Valley. Let's go ahead and.
Hi, my name is Maggie and I live in Mission Valley. The eviction moratorium will likely not last forever, and we will be living with the financial fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic for a while. How will your administration ensure that low-income seniors will have access to affordable housing?
Candidates, I think this is a question that applies not just to seniors, but to people of all ages right now. 60 seconds. Barbara Bree, this one goes to you first.
Yes, so an eviction moratorium without funding is simply an empty promise because eventually the rent is due. And how are you and others going to pay the rent? So as council member, I have supported the establishment of a rent relief fund for San Diegans. And I believe it is incumbent upon the state and the federal government to provide direct financial relief to renters. You need money to pay the rent, and that's the only way this issue can be solved. An eviction moratorium simply delays the inevitability that the rent will be due. And the federal and state government can step up and provide funding directly to renters so they can pay the rent. And the city has established a rent relief fund. I understand from the early data that we do have enough money to help everyone who is eligible who applied. And I'm looking for ways to increase that fund going forward.
All right. Thank you, Barbara Bree. Todd Gloria, the question now goes to you. The moratorium on evictions during COVID-19.
So Maggie, I have been consistent in supporting the eviction moratoriums as well as extending it. You may know that in the state of California, I voted for a bill that places a statewide moratorium in place until February of 2021. We do need additional federal relief, and I will use my experiences as a state legislator and a former congressional staffer to make sure San Diego's voice is heard as we call for additional state and federal relief. Your question is, how can we get more affordable housing for seniors in our community? And that is a priority in my campaign. I'm the candidate that recognizes that our housing crisis is disproportionately impacting working and middle-class San Diegans. And I will lead as mayor to make sure that we are actually creating the units that are affordable for folks like you and I. I think it's a main challenge. This was an issue before the pandemic. It is an issue today, and it is likely an issue to be made far worse after the pandemic is over. And I would simply say my consistency on this issue, unlike my opponent, really shows that I get it, and I will be a true leader when it comes to standing up for you as we deal with our housing crisis.
All right, Barbara Bree, you have 30 seconds to respond to Todd Gloria.
Yeah, so I do have a very concrete plan on how to build more affordable housing. One of the opportunities the pandemic has offered us is the ability for adaptive reuse of office buildings as more people continue to work remotely. I have very concrete ideas. I do not believe that eliminating single-family zoning, which my opponent supports, is the way to do it. That simply will lead to gentrification, as speculators will go first to neighborhoods where housing is less expensive, snap up homes, and build expensive housing, forcing out long-term residents.
All right, Barbara Bree, your time is up. Todd Gloria, you also have 30 seconds.
And so, Maggie, again, I have been consistent. Unfortunately, my opponent has not been in her willingness to extend eviction moratoriums. It is also reflected in the lack of affordable housing production in her council district. KPBS did an investigative report recently showing that units were proposed for her community. I feel that every neighborhood has to do its fair share if we're going to tackle this housing affordability crisis.
That is inaccurate. In the UTC area and in Pacific Highlands Ranch, affordable housing units are being built. So that is very inaccurate.
All right. Thank you, candidates. That concludes the time to answer that question. We're going to jump right now into our round 2 of questioning. This one comes from David in Claremont. Let's hear.
Hi, I'm David, and I live in Claremont. There's been an increase in the number of older adults who participate in the gig economy. How would you revise AB 5 to protect workers while preserving the livelihoods of consultants, instructors, freelance writers, musicians, and more?
All right, AB5, this is another hotly debated one. This question first goes to Todd Gloria. You have a minute.
David, thanks for the question. I do support ending the practice of misclassifying workers. Over 500,000 Californians are believed to have been misclassified, meaning that they don't enjoy the benefits of healthcare insurance, of paid sick days, of minimum wages, and access to important things like Social Security. AB5 was passed. I supported that legislation. We have made subsequent modifications to AB5 to include some of the professions you just mentioned, like musicians and freelance writers. I suspect additional modifications will be done in the years ahead as we look at how this is playing out. But importantly, I think that when we look at the pandemic, we understand the importance of things like unemployment insurance, paid sick days, and healthcare insurance. And a willingness to race to the bottom, to not have employers pay their fair share, means that that cost is borne by workers and by the public. I think not allowing them to pay into something like Social Security undermines our trust fund, which I don't believe any senior would support. And so I believe that we must work very hard to make sure we're not misclassifying workers and that we're making sure these public institutions are well funded.
All right, thank you very much. AB5, Barbara Bree, the question goes to you.
This is an issue on which my opponent and I disagree. I understand the need and believe in worker protections and the benefits, but AB5 was the wrong approach by trying to create a series of exemptions and then continuing to add exemptions when in our new world, we create new kinds of jobs every day. The right approach, which is what has been done in England, which was to create a third category of worker who gets benefits on a sliding scale depending on the number of hours worked. AB5 has been a job killer. It is causing some companies to hire people from out of state to do tasks that were done by Californians. And I'm very concerned that AB5 could put Uber and Lyft and similar companies out of business in California. And seniors depend on these services to get to doctor's appointments, for shopping, to visit their families, and to earn extra money if they are a driver themselves.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Bree. Todd Gloria, you have 30 seconds to respond.
I want to point out that by allowing corporations to not pay their fair share into important systems like the unemployment insurance system means that California is currently borrowing billions from the federal government to pay out benefits to Californians who are out of work in this economy. We have to do what we can to defend institutions like Social Security, and you can count on me to always stand up to protect defined benefit retirement systems like Social Security, because they're the bedrock of financial security and dignity in retirement for so many senior citizens.
And that's why I support a third category of worker, to acknowledge that we live in a new world, a gig economy where many people want the flexibility to work hours they choose and at different kinds of things. And AB5 is stuck in the dark ages and doesn't acknowledge the new reality. There was a way to do this called creating this third class of worker like England did.
All right. Thank you, candidates, for your responses on AB5. Let's jump to our fifth question today.
Hello, my name is Eleanor. I live in North Park. What are your thoughts about the California Assembly bill that legalizes duplexes on properties zoned for one house?
Duplexes. This question first goes to you, Barbara Bree. You have a minute.
Well, so I've been very clear that I support local control of land use, that San Diegans should decide what gets built in our neighborhoods. And my opponent has voted for different pieces of state legislation that would take away local control. Most recently, he voted on a bill that could allow a single family lot to be subdivided into 2 and for 8 units to be built. Fortunately, it did not make it through the legislative process. I think there are other ways we can address making housing more affordable for seniors. I have supported accessory dwelling units, also nicknamed granny flats, and we have something new coming called tiny homes, which is almost through the legislative process. And as I said before, we're going to have great opportunities to reuse office buildings as housing. Much of that could be for seniors, and that is a much less expensive way of meeting our housing challenges.
All right, Barbara Bree. The floor now goes to you, Todd Gloria. Your response on this question about duplexes.
So I support constructing more housing because it's obvious that we have a massive housing crisis as a result of a lack of housing production, particularly for low and middle income San Diegans. I do believe that there is a legislation, like the legislation Councilmember Bree just mentioned, authorized at the state level to allow communities to build accessory dwelling units or granny flats in backyards. That is acceptable to her, and I think that that's a right decision. I think that the state can play a role in making sure local cities that resist more housing production, places not like San Diego who have embraced some housing reforms to create more housing, to make sure they do their fair share. San Diego cannot be responsible for solving the entirety of the state's housing crisis in our own communities. Every community has to play an active role, and that's what some of these bills can do. And I think particularly the kinds of housing that Eleanor was asking about is stuff that is naturally affordable, stuff that regular people can afford, and stuff that individual property owners can decide whether or not they choose to pursue or not.
All right. Thank you, Todd. Gloria, Barbara Bree, you have 30 seconds.
Yes, and another thing I will do as mayor is enforce our existing laws against short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods. Many of these are smaller units in Ocean Beach, Mission Beach, North Park, and Hillcrest, units that were affordable to either buy or be rented by seniors and working families that have now been turned into visitor accommodations. There are about 16,000 of them. That's about $1 billion worth of housing, and I'm going to bring that back to the market for you.
All right. Thank you, Barbara Bree. 30 seconds now goes to Todd Gloria.
Well, I don't know. Vacation rentals are a part of this housing equation. And I point out that San Diego is one of the few cities that has not been capable of regulating vacation rentals, which is really an indictment of the existing leadership at City Hall. But even when you deal with that issue, we still have a massive deficit of housing units. And we collectively have to do all that we can to build housing, not at the luxury end of the market. We have plenty of that, but really focused at the middle and low income level of the market, where seniors on fixed incomes can actually afford to live and don't have to live in fear of rental increases that will leave them evicted and on the streets.
All right. Candidates, you will have more time to talk about short-term rentals because that is the subject of our next question. Take a listen.
My name is Krishna, and I live in downtown San Diego. What is your stance on the current proposal for regulating short-term vacation rentals brokered by Councilwoman Jennifer Campbell?
All right. This question first goes to Todd Gloria. You have a minute.
Well, I want to applaud Councilmember Campbell for taking a leadership role when we've seen a lack of leadership from so many others at City Hall, including the mayor, and allowing this issue to fester and grow and get worse in the communities. I applaud Dr. Campbell for showing leadership, and I'm hopeful the City Council will take up this issue relatively soon. Krishna, my commitment to you is if the council is incapable of making a decision and taking action to protect neighborhoods, I, as mayor, will take that kind of action. Again, I point out other cities have resolved this issue, but this is one of those typical San Diego specials where we just talk about it over and over again without seeing real tangible progress. Ultimately, I believe that we should regulate vacation rentals. We should create a fee, a tax, and a fine system that ensures that we have robust enforcement so that when we have the worst impacts of these uses in neighborhoods, that there is a response that gets compliance straight away, and that the worst offenders of violations would be barred from participating in renting out their units on a short-term basis.
All right. Thank you, Todd Gloria. Barbara Bree, you now have a minute.
Thank you, Krishna. One of the reasons I'm running for mayor is I've been very frustrated at our current mayor and his unwillingness to simply enforce the existing municipal code, which prohibits them in residential neighborhoods. We do not need a new law. I'm going to simply enforce our existing municipal code and bring thousands of units back into the housing market. This impacts communities all over the city. iNewsSource just had a story about units downtown where essentially porn movies are being shot, where people are partying all hours of the day and night. This does not belong in a residential neighborhood. Residential neighborhoods are for you to live in, not for visitors. We have hotel, and I love visitors. They come here and they spend money, and they should be staying in hotels, not in our neighborhoods. We do not need a new law. We need to have the political will to enforce our existing law, which is what I will do.
Todd Gloria, you have 30 seconds to respond.
Well, I also saw that news report, and I would observe that the behavior that was described in the news report involves a lot of illegal acts that could be enforced upon right now. And I guess the question becomes, why is no one at City Hall willing to do that? I saw another news report that talked about how the city raced out to remove chalk writing on a sidewalk in La Jolla. Somehow that got prioritized over the illegal filming in a condo tower in downtown. The priorities at City Hall are messed up, and you need to have someone with the common sense to have the right priorities. I will be that mayor.
Todd Gloria, your time is up. Barbara Bree, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, listen, I've learned the limits of a council member. You don't control the bureaucracy at City Hall. What Mr. Gloria refers to in La Jolla, my office was informed of after the fact. And I'm very disappointed that this happened. I want to be in charge of the city bureaucracy so that we make common sense decisions, so that we listen to our neighborhoods who have been ignored for years.
All right. Thank you so much, candidates. That concludes our first two rounds of questioning. We're going to take a short break and be right back.
Good evening. I'm Kimberly Hunt.
And I'm Steve Atkinson. And we are continuing to monitor the latest numbers on the coronavirus.
Have a positive message for the people.
A business went from having to shut its doors to saving 51 jobs.
Look, I did it in the middle of COVID. So can you.
We don't see ourselves as heroes. We just see ourselves as selfless participants of just doing a greater good.
And one last piece of advice?
Smile. This was a way to bring students and their families together to celebrate the class of 2020.
Letting everyone in San Diego County know that we can build and we can move forward as a unit.
They hear my truth and they believe in my dream and they believe in me. And that's just a big thing, you know?
Welcome back to this mayoral town hall. We're joined by our candidates for mayor, Todd Gloria and Barbara Bree, this morning. It's now time for the third and final round of questions. These are inspired by our viewers and some of our social media comments. The rules remain the same. Each candidate will initially have a minute to respond and then 30 seconds each for rebuttal. Our first question. If elected, what is the first thing that you would do to address calls for police reform in the wake of recent racial tension? This question first goes to Councilmember Bree. You have a minute.
Yes. First of all, it's clear we have racial disparity in policing. All the data shows it. Right now, I'm focused on passing Measure B on the ballot, which will establish an independent police review commission. This is very important in creating trust between residents and law enforcement so that people will feel they have a safe place to turn if they were a victim of police abuse. I have supported this measure since 2018. We did not have enough votes to get it on the ballot then. And I'm very honored that the author of that measure, Andrea St. Julian, who is president of the Earl B. Gilliam Bar Association, has endorsed me for mayor because she knew back in 2018 it was risky for me to support it. This time, the council voted unanimously to put it on the ballot. And the first thing is to get it passed. So I hope you all will vote for it and then to fund it appropriately so it can do its job.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Bree. Todd Gloria, the question now goes to you, police reform.
So on day one, you will see me make a commitment to making sure that if the voters approve Measure B, as I hope that you will, I've endorsed this measure and I recommend a yes vote on Measure B, that I will fully and faithfully implement it. I think too often we see broken promises from City Hall when the voters take a specific action, but it's not played out the way that the voters expected. This will be an expensive endeavor, expanding and strengthening our review board to have things like investigators, independent counsel, and subpoena power will come with some additional costs. But I believe that is money well spent in order to enjoy the trust of the communities that we are sworn to protect and to serve. I think that that is an important measure. Again, I ask you to vote for it. And I say to you that if I'm your next mayor, I commit to making sure that we fund it and implement it fully and faithfully so that we can start the process of becoming national leaders when it comes to policing in the 21st century. San Diego once was a leader when it came to community policing. We can be that again. And I hope to be the leader to make that possible.
Thank you, Todd Gloria. Barbara Bree, you have 30 seconds.
Yes, so this is an issue on which my opponent and I agree. The importance of getting Measure B passed, funding the new commission appropriately, and making San Diego again a leader in neighborhood policing, where police officers are able to get out of their cars and truly get to know the neighborhood, and providing them with the training that they need and recruiting a police force that represents the diversity of our city.
Todd Gloria, you now have 30 seconds.
I would just add that in our city's history, we have never elected a person of color to be mayor of our city. Through my own personal experiences, I know how important it is that we get this right. I don't want to be a city that waits until we have a national tragedy that we must respond to. I want a proactive position that, again, shows us leading and, frankly, prevents the kinds of tragedies we see in cities like Minneapolis and Louisville. We can be a city that leads on policing. I will be a mayor that leads on police reform.
All right, thank you, candidates. Our next question. The coronavirus has hit San Diego's tourism industry especially hard. How would you respond to a recent push to open the convention center before we have a vaccine? This question first goes to Todd Gloria.
Well, reopening our convention center is important for our local economy, but it cannot be done unless it is done safely. I am working with the convention center to try and devise what it would look like to do that in a COVID-19 environment without a vaccine, and sharing those ideas with the state of California to see if there's a way forward. Ultimately, we know the convention center is not going to reopen in 2020, and its current use as a homeless shelter is an appropriate use. I'm troubled that the city currently intends to close the homeless shelter at the convention center sometime next month. I think that that's horribly short-sighted. I believe its operation as a shelter should continue through the calendar year of 2020. We will not, unfortunately, have conventions anytime soon, but we do have thousands of people who are unsheltered. This is a wonderful collaboration between the state, this county, and the city, and we must make sure that we continue to house these people. At a time when we're telling people to stay home to protect their health, we need to make sure we're sheltering as many of our homeless as possible.
Barbara Bree, your turn now.
Yes, housing the homeless at the convention center has proven to be a very valuable collaboration between the city, the county, and the state. And we're actually getting people the help that they need because we've got them all in one place and we can help each person as an individual, whether it's to reunite them with their family, to get them into a substance abuse or mental health program. And I am asking the mayor not to close the convention center. The next mayor should have the convention center open until the end of the year while we figure out how to help the people who are still there. The city is now in the process of buying hotels, which will, at a very good price, which will be able to house about 500 individuals. And I am also working with industry leaders to determine what are best practices to be able to eventually open our convention center so that people can come back in a safe way.
All right, Todd Gloria, you have an additional 30 seconds.
I would just repeat, my support for the convention center. I want folks to know we have incredible professionals who work there, who I do believe want to do this in the best interest in the safest way possible. I worry about the individuals whose jobs are connected to our tourism industry and definitely need the convention center to reopen. But I remind folks that as we have opened and closed our economy, as the virus has grown or shrank, we recognize that whatever we do needs to be long-term. I know folks cannot deal with going back to work and then being sent right back home again. We can just do it thoughtfully and with science and data in mind. That's what we should be doing at the convention center.
Barbara Bree, you now have 30 seconds.
Yes, and it's clear that the hospitality industry has been disproportionately impacted by COVID, hurting many workers who are at the low end of the pay scale. That's why my roadmap to recovery focuses on growing tech, biotech, and other sectors that continued hiring during the pandemic, and making sure we educate the next generation of young people so that they will have access to these good jobs and the service sector jobs around them.
All right, thank you, candidates. We've come to our last question this morning. If elected, what is your first priority when it comes to addressing homelessness here in the city of San Diego? This question first goes to Barbara Bree.
Yes. My plan for addressing our homelessness focuses on addressing the root causes, and I'm honored that Father Joe has endorsed me. That means treating each person as an individual and having a seamless system where there's one number you can call to get the help you need. My own personal experience on March 3rd was having a homeless gentleman walk up to me at a busy corner in the southern part of the city and ask for help. And I called 211 San Diego, was put on hold, was shuffled around. I was able, though, because I'm a council member, to get him into the Alpha Project. He told me he had a drinking problem. He left his wife had left him. He'd lost his job. His sister had literally dropped him off a mile away. She couldn't handle him anymore, nor should a family member be asked to do this. We have a broken system. There should have been one number to call to get this gentleman the help that he needed. And as mayor, I will fix that.
All right, thank you, Barbara Bree. Todd Gloria, you have a minute. Homelessness here in San Diego.
Lindsay, I've spent my career working and leading on the issue of homelessness, and we have a homelessness crisis in the city. And I believe it's time to elect a homelessness advocate to the mayor's office to get transformational change. Cities across the nation are being certified as ending chronic homelessness. San Diego is not one of those communities. And when looking at what are the common denominators on what can be done there and trying to answer the question directly, you have to have strong mayoral leadership. You have to have data and transparency with providers, making sure that those who receive public funds can prove that they get folks off the streets and keep them off the streets in order to continue to get their funding. We must work with the County of San Diego in a collaborative way, marrying our Equality Housing Commission with their Health and Human Services Agency in a proven method of getting people off the streets. We must work with other cities in the region in a collaborative fashion to make sure that what we're doing matches what's being done in Chula Vista and El Cajon and in Escondido. And importantly, we must build more housing, because while many of our homeless are mentally ill and have substance abuse issues, many of them are simply the working poor and they cannot find a place they afford to live. So that's my plan for homelessness.
Thank you. Barbara Bree, you have 30 additional seconds.
Yes, I'd like to remind viewers that when Mr. Gloria was sworn in for a second term on the City Council in 2012, he promised to end chronic homelessness downtown. Instead, in his last 4 years on the council, it more than doubled. And I have data from the Downtown Partnership that tracks this every month. I'm not about making empty promises. I'm about solutions. There are too many homeless people on the street now. They are chronically in need of mental health and substance abuse assistance, and that is what I will do as mayor.
All right, Todd Gloria, your response.
Well, I appreciate the data, but when I was working on that campaign, I sure don't recall seeing my opponent doing anything with regard to homelessness. In fact, I don't recall her doing much about it prior to her running for mayor. I have a long track record of caring about this issue. It's the most difficult issue that we face. It is not going to be solved easily, but it is solvable, and it starts with having direct leadership and accountability, and that's what I'm offering the voters of San Diego.
All right, thank you, candidates. That concludes our time for questions. It is now time to hear closing statements from each candidate. They each have 2 minutes. We will begin with Todd Gloria.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for tuning in and watching this exchange. I am running for mayor because I have a vision for where I'd like to take our city. As you heard me say at the beginning, I'd like to share with people that my parents, two working class San Diegans, were able to work very hard in the city. We were able to buy a home and put their 2 kids through college. They were able to do that 30 years ago. And I think that many of us recognize that working class blue collar people in San Diego cannot replicate that story today in 2020. And I think that that's wrong. And I think we should have a mayor that understands that working people are struggling to be able to afford to live in the city, that sees and hears those people and prioritizes and champions their issue. I believe that we can be a great city that boldly leads on a multitude of issues, from defeating COVID-19 and establishing our economy, to ending structural racism, to tackling our climate crisis. And for the issues of seniors, I understand that the issues of isolation and economic insecurity are real. Again, I am running to be a mayor for all of us, and that is inclusive of our senior community. I believe we can be an age-friendly community, a place where you can grow and you can grow old in your home, in safety, in security, not in isolation. I believe San Diego's best days are ahead. I believe that because this city has given me so much opportunity. I want to make sure those pathways of opportunity continue to exist for today's San Diegans, for my nieces and for my nephews. And I want to I humbly ask for your vote on November the 3rd, if not sooner. Let's take the city in a new direction, a direction that is guided by experienced leadership. You all know that I served as mayor of this city for 8 months. I'm asking you for the opportunity to do it for 8 years. I ask humbly for your vote.
All right. Thank you, Todd Gloria. Barbara Bree, you now have 2 minutes to make your final comments.
Thank you. My life has been coming up with solutions, not empty promises. And that's what my roadmap to recovery is all about. Universal internet access, adaptive reuse of office buildings for housing, much of it for seniors, making San Diego a model for an effective remote workforce, and promoting job development south of Interstate 8, closer to where many people live. I've had a diverse career, and I've learned something unique from every part of my life. I've been a journalist, a tech entrepreneur, an educator. I've started 2 organizations that empower women, Run Women Run, and Athena San Diego. I've been a mom, a wife, and a grandma who wants a better world for her grandchildren. My husband Neil and I are blessed that grandchildren 6 and 7, identical twin boys, are coming in March, and they will be growing up in San Diego. So it's our children and our grandchildren that I'm thinking about, all of our children and grandchildren, as I make decisions. My opponent has always worked in government. I believe that the diversity of my life experiences, the ability to think in new ways, and it's clear we have to do things differently. What's worked in the past is not going to work in the future, has prepared me to lead our city at this extraordinary moment in time. I'm excited about our city's future. We have so many opportunities. Our diverse populations, our great universities, our thriving tech and biotech, our beautiful natural environment. With the right mayor, we can capitalize on them. I have demonstrated that I have the courage and independence to challenge the status quo, and that's what it's going to take to get our city on track. Please join me in making San Diego work for you, our residents. Together we can fix this. I would be honored to have your vote.
All right. And with that, we come to the end of this mayoral town hall, the race for San Diego mayor. Thank you once again to our candidates for joining us, Barbara Bree and Todd Gloria. We really appreciate your time, as I'm sure did the viewers who got to watch today. For ABC 10 News, our community partners, Meals on Wheels and Oasis San Diego, I'm ABC 10 News anchor Lindsay Pena. Thank you again.